Three straight losses, kosong points, almost eliminated for second successive ACL2 campaign. Taktik tiada, keinginan tidak ada, mentality tiada, bahkan nama juga untuk bermain. Maaf Selangor dalam kekalahan Asia terbau. That was how abject Selangor were as they fell to a 0-2 defeat away to Persib Bandung in Indonesia tonight. And how bad was Selangor? You can count the number of shots the Red Giants make with just one hand. And they make, you can say, the efforts they tried to go forward was really the other here, the other there. Overall display, it was so bad that you can easily say that this is probably one of the Red Giants' worst performances of the season. Even though they lost to Lion City Sailors at Bishan a few weeks back, they showed more fight in Bishan than in Bandung tonight. And with 3 successive straight losses, failure to win their next group game, this time at home to Persib, will confirm their elimination from the ACL2 at the group phase for second season running. And how poor was Selangor despite fielding an almost full strength lineup, with the notable exception of Alif Haikal being deployed in midfield alongside Zach Glove and Werline, at the expense of the Jordanian midfielder Al Rabade. Well, I think the overall shape was sort of there, but otherwise there was really very little to say. Takde lah. Faham je. Really. Selangor only had their first shot on target after only 40 minutes. Yes, it took Merah Kuning 40 minutes to finally get their first shot on target. That was how poor Selangor were in the first half, where after the initial spark at the start of the game, but they found themselves pinned back so much within their own third by Persib Bandung as they struggled to stem wave after wave of blue shirts coming at them, especially on their left side, where Kevin Duram, who was entrusted to in that role as the left back or left wing back, he was barely present in the game. It was like their number 4, William Barros, was having such a good time marauding down from that flank, whether it was going straight down the right or cutting in from the right, especially in the first half where he actually slalom past a few players before bursting to the final third with a shot that went straight to Sik Izan. So that was the first warning shot that Persib was giving in an otherwise overall quite tepid. Persib were dominant, but the focus is how bad Selangor were. Yes, really terrible performance from Christophe Gamel's men on the pitch tonight overall. And how to put it, in the whole game you can see that the first half, that was the state of play. And again, in the 23rd minute, before the 21st minute, he was already a constant threat down that flank. Then just before the half hour, Persib finally took the lead. And what happened was a classic case of abject defending, where the cracks, that pressure to keep holding the blue shirts at bay for as long as they could, finally got prize open. That was how effortless Persib got their first goal. And it was rather so easy. It's like the Jordanian player on the pitch, Awanadi, he missed his challenge after the Persib's number 23 put the first goal scorer through a goal. It's like Quentin Ching make a late challenge. Sid Isan was rushing forward, but Alim all he had to do was just slot the ball into the net. That was how easy Persib got their first goal. And I mean, William was such a threat in the first half. He nearly got a second as well, but it wasn't to be after he sent his shot wide. And how did Selangor get that first attempt at goal? One of the very few attempts Selangor managed to attempt to even try to breach the Persib goal. Well, it went to Alvin Fortes, one of the three forwards of the night, on playing deep on the right alongside Faisal on the left, who had no notable shot at goal at all throughout the whole 90 minutes. And Shirigor, who was working hard, and both he and Faisal Halim often dropping all the way back into midfield. Yes, even deeper than the midfielders themselves, to retrieve the ball in their vain efforts to try to get things going for the red shirts, as they struggle to find any cohesion, any coherence, even any flow that they could even master in wet conditions in Bandung. They tried, but as a team, Selangor were all over the place. Then in the second half, a brief burst in the opening few minutes, and it went back to type again, especially when Selangor was still having hopes of chasing for the equalizer, and all it needed was a rather clumsy nudge, contact by Harif Haikal on the Persib number 93 to concede that penalty. It was like he didn't push, but the bottom half of his body was in contact with Persib's number 93, who was trying to hold the ball while he was in all fours inside the box on the pitch. And the moment that nudge went down, the Uzbek referee clearly had no hesitation pointing to the spot. And given at this group stage where there is no virtual assistant referee, the man in the middle, his decision was final. And the moment Andrew Jong sent Sheikh Izan the wrong way with a low spot kick that went straight into the bottom corner, that was it. You can see the total collapse of Merah Kuning when it came to reorganizing themselves, picking themselves up. It's like the spirit is totally gone from the red shirts after that. It's like all Selangor were doing was just drifting and just waiting for the game to finish. That a jab. No more organization, no more flow, passing without intent or purpose, surrendering even though there was still around half an hour to go, and that includes added time. It was like, where was the fight? Even when they were losing. Against Sailors, they couldn't defend against Anderson Lopez, but Selangor was still trying to push for something. Even in a messy game against Bangkok United at home, they were still trying to push for goals. So what happened this time in Bandung? Totally pecah. Habis. Really incredible display, not in the positive light. And it didn't help that Gamel's opposite number on the Persib bench, Bojan Hodak, he knew Malaysian club football inside out, and Malaysian football as a whole. He knew the clubs, he knew the players, he knows the mentality. He knows what the state of the league is and how players and teams usually respond when they are in certain situations. And he is definitely aware that Faisal Halim coming into this game was in red hot form, scoring 7 goals in 6 consecutive games for Selangor and Harimau Malaya in all in 6 matches in all competitions. And that streak that began on the 24th of September came to an end tonight. It was pretty instructive in how he utilized his knowledge of Malaysian club football to stymie Selangor, to leave them with no solutions on the tactical questions he threw back at Gamel and company. You can see that already in that first half an hour or so, they were really just hoping for the best. They're trying to move, but Persib's quick pressing, their intensity was forcing Selangor to keep passing the ball backwards rather than trying to find a way to go forward. While Persib, all they had to do is to find that pockets of space that the scrambling Merah Kuning defenders were trying to plug, and to exploit that space by having those direct diagonal balls or finding that pass where the fullbacks, the wingers, they can all find the space to try to attempt a cross or to stretch the Red Giants defense to the hilt. And he knew that if Faisal was denied the service, there was little Faisal could do apart from trying to retrieve the ball back in midfield on his own. And the end result for Persib Bandung, and bad news for Selangor, it was a dominant display of possession for the home side, the will and power to send Selangor reeling mentally first before crushing them with 2 goals. They didn't have to be at their best. They didn't need to even start Tom Hay in midfield. All they needed was having the patience to break Selangor's will, and successfully Hodak did in the Asian Club competition. Then there is also the odd question on Selangor's head coach Christoph Gamel. Sure, he came into this game with 2 straight victories against Immigration in the Malaysian Super League and Negeri Sembilan with a convincing 4-0 win in the first leg of the quarter-final of the Malaysia FA Cup. But Persib were a different proposition from these 2 local opposition that Selangor had faced in recent matches. And you can see from the way how Gamel chose his starting 11, both against, whether it was against Lion City Sailors or Persib, there was a bit of distrust from the Frenchman on how he saw the Jordanian players. And from the young players, the amount of young players that he had placed on the Selangor bench, it was pretty clear that Gamel had one eye looking towards the future, but he needed to at least try to give Selangor a fighting chance with a strong lineup. The only notable change, as I mentioned earlier, Alif Haikal Lau being in midfield, and that is at the expense of Noor Rabde. But previously against Sailors, it was Muhammad Abu Nadi who was on the bench and had to come on late in the second half against the Sailors, because Richmond Ankara, who is this time on the bench and was an unused substitute, they allowed Anderson Lopez to score 4 past them. Poor defensive display, but the midfield and attack were undaunted. They knew that they had a difficult task, but Persib Bandung was a different story. It's like they were there physically, but mentally they were nowhere, especially after the goals were scored. And with Alif Haikal finishing the game in the full 90 minutes, actually it's a possible sign of, could more young talents be blooded, especially with knowing now that Selangor are not going to progress to the next round of the ACL2 competition. it's highly possible that if they do not win the next game at home against Persib, that's it. And perhaps in their away leg in Bangkok, that's where the young players will come in to gain some game experience. So that tactical selection, the square pegs in round holes, it's like they insisted on playing a back four with a fluid no line drifting between playing at centre back or in his defensive midfield anchor role. It wasn't really working that well at all. So, could this be a sign of changes to come, especially in the next few games, especially when now, already more than a quarter into the season, with a change of head coach, it's already back to the drawing board for Christophe Gamel and company. And finally, about Faisal Halim, I already mentioned he was already in red hot scoring form for close to a month, 6 games, 7 goals for both Selangor and Malaysia. But tonight he had no service. He was kept quiet. He worked, he ran, he tried to find ways to be effective. When he was kept quiet on the left, he tried center right. Center right he did a little better, but when he and Chirgol were trying to regain the ball in midfield more than the center midfielders, you know that there's a very big problem. There was nobody trying to marshal the midfield for the Red Giants. And without the service that Faisal was looking for, with Dioram so quiet on the left, what was Faisal expected to do? And with Selangor executing their tactical masterclass with precision, although not at their best, they were able to keep Faisal quiet. Faisal could not make any of his trademark runs and bursts of speed that made him such a lethal threat in that red hot form. And he did not even have an attempt at goal. That was how effective the screening of Selangor's captain and most dangerous player was. So you can't blame Faisal totally for that defeat. But what can he do when he had no service for much of the game? So ultimately, the verdict for after the third successive defeat, Selangor are definitely at the bottom of the group, 0 points, -6 goal difference, 6 points behind second place Bangkok United in this All ASEAN Group G. And if they fail to win, this is the third time I'm saying it already, Selangor are out of the ACL2 at the group stage for a second successive season. And perhaps for Gamel and his coaching staff, it is time for the Red Giants to refocus on the rest of their domestic campaign and the ASEAN Club Championship Shopee Cup. So it's back to the drawing board for Gamel and company. And perhaps we will say, could we see a better performance in their home league against Persib after such a sorry, jialat, really nowhere here, nowhere there performance in Bandung tonight?